Welcome to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannon, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. Ross Brannon is a financial advisor who knows it's not just about your teeth. He helps dental practice owners protect and maximize today's cash flow to plan for tomorrow's cash needs. Find him at rossbrannon.com. On the show, he brings together experts to help dental professionals looking to make smart money decisions to grow their income, turn their retirement goals into reality, and improve their lives. And now, here's your host, Ross Brannon.
Welcome to the show. Today we have Justin Marti on. Justin is a healthcare attorney with a focus on M&A transactions, but he has a very unique backstory in that he co-founded and sold a $50 million dental group to private equity before becoming a lawyer. That's going to be interesting. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ross.
So this is an absolutely fascinating story that you probably are the only person in the United States with a story like this. You're not a dentist, but you started a DSO, or not a DSO. You started a dental group that you sold to a DSO, and then you became a lawyer. So kind of walk us through that whole process.
I don't know what I was thinking with the transition into being a lawyer. But yeah, so we go back 20 years coming out of college and was in Boston, and I was working in, patient financing, working with one of the healthcare financing companies, working with dentists, doctors, physicians, and ended up getting approached by this one, team, brother, sister team, dentist / business owner team, really small clinics in the outskirts of Boston, but they wanted to grow the brand. They had kind of this vision, and I don't know, I was an entrepreneur, I guess, at heart. So I quit the day job and gave up the company car and all the things that you're supposed to do. And we started a practice in Worcester, Massachusetts. So not the greatest part of town, built everything by IKEA, by hand. And I'm like 27 years old, 26. I'm hiring doctors. I'm working at the front desk. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. So it was a wild ride, but
what made them pick you? What made them say he has the it factor? He's not a dentist. How is he going to help us grow this?
Yeah. So myself and a few other folks joined on, and I think they just were looking for that entrepreneurial spirit, and I had been coaching their staff for a while. I mean, for a couple of years, I was teaching them how to sell treatment, how to utilize patient financing as a tool. And so it was Capital One at the time, like a Care Credit competitor, so it was just kind of getting really intimate with their staff and their team. And I think there was just this synergy, hey, let's go grow this thing bigger.
So you joined the team with a couple of other people and you guys start growing it. Talk about that.
Yes. I hang a shingle. We used to open a practice. Again, we were very fortunate, worked hard. It worked out. We opened more locations. I relocated. I'm in Connecticut now. And I started opening locations across Connecticut, Massachusetts, some other people, like I said, some other partners joined on. And, 10, 11 years later, we had 45 locations across the Northeast, just became a well-oiled machine. And so for some reason along the lines, I was I didn't have enough going on. And I'm like, well, let me look into law school with no intention really on practicing. It was actually originally going to be an MBA. And somehow I got this idea of a law degree. No plan to really practice per se, I'm a nerd, wanted to keep learning. And, it kind of all came together, right? I graduated. We ended up exiting the company. We sold it in a PE deal. And, it was now my phone's ringing with all these docs, who used to work for us saying, help me, open locations, help me buy practices. How did you transition? How do you sell? And so, it kind of made sense to step into this role. And now this is exactly what I do all day is talk to these docs.
So you help with M&A, but you do more than that now as a lawyer. What all specifically do you do?
We do a lot of M&A transactions, like you said. We do a lot of DSO or MSO if it's, we do some stuff outside of dentistry, structuring. So we're helping, I've got a client who has 15 practices right across, the Northeast. And they're all fragmented, and there's different partners in each office. So we're kind of bringing it all together, building out that true DSO, putting service agreements in place so that now, they can go to market hopefully in a couple of years, and they're built out the right way and not kind of.
So helping structure their business where it's not like duct taped together, basically.
Absolutely. That's how we started. Like with our group, we were so fragmented and, a lot of work went in when we exited, a lot of legal work went into putting it together the right way.
So how do you help with clients who are selling? Because as you know, they might work with a broker, they might work with an M&A guy, an M&A firm. Where do you come in?
I always talk to people about like building your team, have your M&A people, your CPA, your broker, your attorney, hopefully. And so we're a part of the team. I mean, we want to, obviously we get the fun job of going through, the 80-page purchase agreement or the 100-page purchase agreement and like going through the fine print, negotiating deal terms. It really is a collaborative effort though. I mean, I lean a lot on the brokers and the CPAs when we're negotiating like the allocation, the goodwill, all that fun stuff. That's kind of where we come in.
What do you think about, and I know this is going to be a fun one, what do you think about the do-it-yourself dentist trying to handle this on their own? And be nice as you can.
It's a loaded question for sure. I don't know, man. I mean, people obviously, there's no requirement to go out and hire a lawyer. You can tell a lot of times when, in fact, we've done deals where we represent one side and the other side maybe doesn't have a lawyer. And I swear we end up like doing more lawyer, like explaining stuff to the other side so that they kind of get it. It's like a different ball game. And I think, there's so much nuance that goes in these deals and like liability and like pieces that, again, I didn't even know till I got into this. Even I had this big DSO with my partners. I had no idea about all the little things that, we could be at risk for. And in fact, I was very like anti-lawyer because I'm like, they just ran on your parade and they're just telling you all the negative things that can happen. But now I've seen it. So if you DIY it, it makes me a little nervous.
Well, you have to realize, and not everyone thinks of it this way. When you explain it to them, the light bulb goes off. It's more often than not, this is the one and only transaction of a doctor's life, while a DSO is doing this once a week or more.
Right. Right.
And so while they're probably not inherently evil people, they are going to negotiate terms to their advantage.
Absolutely.
Now, do you do a lot of doctor-to-doctor transaction work?
We do. I'd say we do. It's like 50-50 doc to doc versus, doc selling to a DSO.
Okay. And I guess, what are you seeing out there? Because you're kind of in the trenches every day seeing this type of stuff. What are the biggest mistakes that you see doctors making besides not hiring an attorney?
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one. No, it's honestly, they focus, and I get it, right? I've sold a business. Everyone focuses on that bottom line, the carrot dangling in front of you. My friend got 5 million or 10 million. That's what I want. And that's great. But it's like, what's the real number? How attainable is that, right? Because there's going to be an earnout component. You're going to get some cash at closing. You're going to have to work to get, hit some numbers. You're probably going to get equity. What's that equity really worth? So I think, the DSOs will hang some big carrots in front of people, which is exciting, but like, you've got to dissect it and really figure out like, okay, how, realistic is it that I can hit that number? How much am I walking away with today? So yeah, that's hands down the number one. Without even doing any diligence, they'll just kind of say, hey, these guys are giving me X, they're giving me Y, I'm going in that direction.
How many times do you see or experience somebody wanting to go cheap because they don't want to pay the fee, whatever the fee is, and not realizing that they would earn a multiple of that fee by having a professional at their side?
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm partial clearly, but I've seen folks who didn't want to go with us because of our fee. We work on a flat fee model and this is all we do. So, we believe there's a certain value there, but I've seen plenty of, clients or non-clients, I guess, go in a different direction and use kind of the family attorney who does, divorce law and real estate and all that. And it's a very different, I would never go into court and, look to litigate a case, just not my thing. So we stay in our lane. I think people leave a lot of chips on the table if you don't find that like specialist, just like you guys, right? Like this is what you do. You have a very niche practice area. And I think people leave a lot of opportunity on the table when they don't find like the specialist.
How often you see, because like you said a minute ago, it's very easy for a seller to get caught up on the multiple. And I think what I've seen is private equity is kind of taking advantage of that. And they'll tell you you're getting a multiple, or they'll give you a multiple, but they'll structure or financially engineer the deal where it really isn't a 10x, it's more like 8.5x. Whether it's because they calculate your EBITDA in a less than favorable way for you, and you just don't understand. They don't understand how it's happening, or what's happening. Do you see that happen a lot?
I do, and I don't want to paint the DSOs to be the evil empire, but they definitely they have a job to get out there and acquire great practices, and again they can excite people with the multiple, and you're so right. Like it's like this game of who got the biggest multiple, and everyone's talking. I got 10, I got 8, I got 12. But you're absolutely right. Like, what are you really getting at the end of the day? Like cash at close, that's big. Equity, if it's a strong company, great. But like, what are they really valuing your multiple? And it's amazing because I'll see LOIs from different DSOs come across, and the multiples can just be like wildly different, And I think they're each justified in how they figure it out. But it is very interesting that I put only so much value on the multiple. I'm more like, what are you really getting? Who are you partnering with? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, obviously the what I call the unicorn and fairy dust on the back end, which obviously a lot of that comes to fruition, but a lot of it doesn't come to fruition. How do you help clients navigate what's real and what's not real from that perspective?
I feel like we wear a lot of the therapist hat sometimes, and I have to we're cautiously optimistic, and I try to really tell the doc, let's look back, right? If you might have this tremendous earnout, but let's not overcommit either. I understand that if you commit to this number and you hit that, you're going to make some wild income. But let's look back, what did you do the past 3 years, right? And what is your run rate? And let's be realistic. And, we kind of hash it out. And I don't always want to rain on their parade, but I just don't want to put them in a position where they call me a year later and they're like, I didn't hit my earnout. I'm not making any money. How do I get out of this agreement? Which I've seen happen, and it's it's not a fun thing when the doctor is not in a good position. So I think being a little bit of an advocate, but also, trying to be realistic, hear out their concerns and put them in a good position to, succeed.
Well, it is a little bit of a marriage, at least short term, because I've heard stories of people getting a crazy multiple, and then 90 days after sale, they've quit because it was such a toxic environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a doc who it's sad, who just reached out to us. He closed 8-9 months ago, and he's not happy in the position he's in. And you just look back and man, did we miss something? Or, is it just not a good partnership? Obviously relationships are hard, and, divorce rates are what they are for a reason. So, we try to avoid that when we can.
So what do you see happening in the DSO market today?
As you've probably seen, there's a lot of tension right now, right? And people are wondering what's happening. Recession, not a recession, are we tightening our belts? Are we aggressive? I've sensed a little bit of tightening the belts with a lot of DSOs. I've sensed that multiples, some folks are they've come down. I think people have just gotten a little more realistic. I think a lot of DSOs went on a spending spree right after COVID or a little pre-COVID, and maybe it didn't work out totally as they hoped. So I think a lot of groups are just being, more, the diligence is a little tougher. I do feel like deals are taking a bit longer to close, which is certainly stressful for a seller. Is this thing ever going to happen? So I feel like there's a lot of tense kind of energy, and I still see deals happening and people are, transacting and happy, but seems like it's just a little slower and a little more cautious.
I have heard that the interest rate environment has definitely created some challenges, and there's been about a dozen or so recaps that never happened because of that. And so It definitely is an interesting market from, if you're putting leverage on anything, it definitely creates some interesting dynamics.
Right.
So explain in detail, how you're going to help somebody you work with Like explain, okay, I need an attorney. Okay, he's going to charge me X amount of hours. He's going to read an 80-page contract. Is it really worth X? Explain actually what you're doing for people.
So it starts, I mean, to really kind of like harp on that partner position that we take, it really starts like at LOI. A lot of times a broker brings us in post LOI, which is always a little tricky because now I feel like even though it's non-binding, we're like, well, you committed to that. And now we have to negotiate, against that. If we can come on early, we can figure out like, all right, what are your goals? Like, how do we get you there and keep you legally protected? That's step one. Then we negotiate the deal terms throughout an LOI. And then, like you said, we get into the nitty gritty and we're just, painfully going through these documents looking for exposure, long-term exposure, something they represented to be true that may not have been, true, or just some overstatement. Like we want to make sure the doctor's totally protected. And of course that like they're in a good position, that the deal terms that we went over in the LOI are actually articulated in the contract. Because a lot of times things change, ironically, between those two. And it may not be that there's any ill will, but a lot of folks, I don't know, lawyers can over lawyer things rather easily. We're not fans of that. We try to like make it pretty black and white that this is the goal and this is what was in the LOI, and constantly just communicating with the doctor. Because I feel like one of the biggest complaints about attorneys is, I can't get a hold of them and I don't know what's happening. So it's just constantly communicating with them. Like, here's where we're at right now. We're working through the fine print, back and forth with them. And it is, like I said, it's a very collaborative effort. But man, you spend a lot of hours reading and drafting and all the things to make sure they're in a good position.
For sure. And so how do you work hand in hand with the broker?
So the brokers, like I said, sometimes they'll come to us and the deal's kind of, packaged and there's an LOI that's executed. I always tell our broker like partners, hey, if you can bring us in before we sign, just to put eyes on things before we sign the LOI, that's helpful. My goal is absolutely not to be a deal killer. It's to put certainly like a realistic lens on things and make sure we're looking for things that might be overlooked, in the initial LOI phase, but definitely not to over lawyer anything either. But really, again, that whole partner concept, I hate to like harp on it, but I mean, I want the broker has a relationship. I don't want to come in and stir things up and make it difficult. I don't want to put them in a bad spot. I don't want to put the doctor in a bad spot. I just want to make sure we protect everybody, but have a successful transaction and hopefully set these guys up for a great, opportunity post-transaction.
So as a guy who built basically a mini DSO and you sold it to private equity, and I've seen some dentists decide to go down that road to build, a large group practice versus selling to a DSO. Do you feel like some doctors are missing the boat by not taking advantage of that? Or do you feel like a lot of them just don't have that skill set because not everyone does?
To build out the DSO, like kind of the mini DSO?
Yeah. It's also quite a lot of work that they may not be wanting to do at that point in their career.
Yeah. And I think it's tough. I think I think I probably minimize, some of what goes into it, but they're treating too, right? That's one of they're in the operatory and they're working, and building a business of any kind, is tough. And now you figure the majority of your day is spent actually treating patients. Okay, now I got to do my chart notes, and I got my front desk left. I have to replace that person. And, I think a lot of them have this hope and dream of building a DSO, of building their own kind of multi-location empire. But there's a lot that goes into it beyond, working in the operatory that I think it's just hard to get there. So that's why I think a lot of our clients come to us because they want to be a part of something bigger. They want to kind of keep it growing, certainly want to cash out a little bit too. And that's why they kind of make the decision to sell.
Yeah, I think it's a unique skill set that not everyone has, and you need to align yourself with the right people, the right partners to do that the right way. And so it's definitely an interesting thing. So how will people, if people are interested in engaging you, how do they get in touch with you?
We're all over the web, right? And try to be out in the forefront of this industry, conferences and all that good stuff. But certainly our website's a good place to go, martilawgroup.com.
That's MRTI lawgroup.com.
Yep, MARTI lawgroup.com. By email, justin@martilawgroup.com. And certainly, again, all over LinkedIn and all the places that we need to be, you can generally find us.
Well, a good lawyer is worth their weight in gold. A bad one is like an abscess. So, I would highly encourage you guys to have a conversation with Justin. It's a fascinating conversation. You have a really unique story, Justin. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks again. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannon.
This has been another episode of Financial Flossing with Ross Brannon, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. For more on Ross Brannon, visit rossbrannon.com.
Ross Brannon is a registered representative, Coastal Equities, Inc., and investment advisory representative, Coastal Investment Advisors, Inc. Investment advisory services are offered through Coastal Investment Advisors, Inc., and securities are offered through Coastal Equities, Inc. Member FINRA, SIPC, 1201 North Orange Street, Suite 729, Wilmington, Delaware, 19801.